The evening settled softly over the neighborhood. Warm light. A slow breeze. The kind of calm that made the world feel gentle and unhurried. Claire stepped onto the porch with a small basket of potted herbs. She liked ending her day this way. Quiet hands, quiet thoughts, the faint scent of rosemary lifting into the air. Behind her, Maple's paws clicked lightly against the wooden boards. A familiar rhythm. Comforting. Predictable. But tonight, the sound changed. Maple stopped halfway across the porch. Her posture tightened. Ears angled forward. Tail held low, not tucked, just focused, alert. Claire glanced back with a soft smile. Come on, girl. Just a few more plants. Maple didn't move. Instead, her body leaned subtly toward the yard. Nose lifted. Chest rising a little too quickly. A quiet, almost trembling breath. Claire set the basket down. The stillness pressed around them. Not frightening, just different. Different enough to make her heart slow for a beat. She walked toward Maple, her steps gentle. Maple? Hey, what's going on? Maple gave a small, uncertain whine. Barely a sound. More like a feeling. A nudge of emotion wrapped in breath. Claire knelt beside her, brushing her fingers through Maple's warm fur. The dog leaned into her touch, but her gaze didn't break from the yard. Focused. Fixed. Almost pleading. Claire followed the line of Maple's stare. Nothing stirred. Just grass swaying in the soft wind. The old oak tree stretching its branches. Fireflies blinking in the shadows. Everything looked normal. Still, Maple's body told a different story. Claire swallowed, feeling that subtle pull inside her chest. The one that came whenever Maple sensed something she couldn't. Did you hear something? She whispered. Her voice softened, slowed, matching the quiet tension in the air. Maple didn't bark. She didn't growl. She simply stepped forward one pace, then blocked Claire gently with her body. Protective motion. Instinctive. Soft but certain. Claire's breath caught. Maple, what is it? Maple's ears flicked. Her tail gave a low, hesitant sweep. Not happy. Not anxious. Something in between. A signal Claire had learned to respect over the years. The dog's nose dipped toward the steps. Then she looked back at Claire. A look that said, don't go down there. Not yet. Not until you understand. Claire stood slowly. The boards creaked under her feet. The evening light dimmed just slightly, as though the sky itself were holding its breath with them. Maple inched closer, touching her leg with quiet urgency. Another whine. Barely a whisper of sound, but full of feeling. Claire felt her pulse warm. Not fear. Just a rising awareness. A sense that Maple was catching something her human eyes couldn't see. She crouched again, bringing herself level with Maple. Talk to me, sweet girl. Maple shifted her weight. One step forward. Then she froze, muscles tense in careful concentration. Claire reached out and held Maple's collar gently between her fingers. Not to pull, just to steady herself. Maple's breathing slowed, then quickened, then steadied again. Claire waited with her. Seconds passed quietly. The world around them softened into an almost cinematic stillness. Leaves rustling. A single bird chirping its last call of the evening. The faint hum of a distant street lamp. Maple leaned her head against Claire's shoulder for a moment. A grounding touch. Warm. Intentional. Then she stepped back toward the porch door, as if urging Claire to stay inside. Not out of fear, but out of gentle, protective certainty. Claire blinked. Maple. You don't want me to go into the yard? Maple sat, right there at the threshold, blocking, alive with quiet tension. Her gaze never left the shadows near the bushes. Claire looked again. Harder this time. Still nothing. No danger. No movement. Just the wide calm of a normal evening. But Maple's chest rose with another trembling breath. And Claire felt something shift inside her. A realization forming. Slowly. Deeply. She stepped backward. Just one single step. Maple exhaled, long and relieved, as if Claire had finally done exactly what she'd been asking for all along. Claire's heart thumped once, heavy and warm. Maple nudged her knee again. A softer nudge. thankful, affectionate. Something was out there. Something Maple understood before she did. Claire placed a hand on Maple's head. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. A breeze rolled through the yard. Light, carrying something faint. Something Claire hadn't noticed until now. She inhaled slowly. Let the moment stretch. Let the truth settle. And in that quiet, tender pocket of evening light, that's when everything finally made sense. Morning arrived quietly. Soft light filtering through pale curtains. The kind of early calm that made the world feel safe, simple, almost weightless. Claire stepped onto the porch with her mug of tea. Steam curled upward in gentle ribbons. The air smelled like dew and sun-warmed wood. Maple padded out beside her. Usually mornings were her favorite, tail wagging, eager for their daily walk, ears perked with excitement. But today, that spark wasn't there. Instead, Maple moved slowly across the porch. Nose low, body steady but unusually cautious. Claire frowned softly. Well, that's a new mood for you. Maple paused at the exact spot she'd frozen last night. Same tension. Same stillness. As if the evening's unease had simply carried over into the sunrise. Claire sipped her tea and watched. Maple's ears twitched. Then twitched again. Her body angled toward the yard. Not with fear, but with a quiet determination that felt deeper, older, instinctual. Claire set the mug down. You okay, girl? Maple didn't look back. She sniffed the air. One slow inhale. Then a second sharper one. Her chest tightening for a moment before she exhaled through her nose. Another signal. Subtle, but unmistakable. Claire slipped her hands into her sweater pockets. I'm starting to think you're trying to tell me something. Maple stepped forward. Stopped. Looked back at Claire with a small, almost pleading sound. A warm, delicate ache bloomed in Claire's chest. Maple didn't whine for no reason. Not ever. Claire moved closer, crouching beside her. Show me. The dog shifted, guiding Claire's gaze with the soft turn of her head, toward the bushes near the end of the yard. Nothing unusual stood out. Just early sunlight glittering on wet leaves. A few shadows stretching across the grass. But Maple's body was firm with attention. Grounded. Present. A soft breeze rolled through, carrying something faint. A smell Claire couldn't place. Barely there, but Maple felt it. Claire rested a hand on Maple's back. It's okay. I'm with you. Together they stepped down the porch stairs. Maple stayed close. Not pulling toward danger. Not dragging Claire along. Just guiding with patient, steady steps. Halfway across the yard, Maple stopped again. Her paw lifted slightly off the ground, the way she did when she was tracking something delicate. Claire narrowed her eyes. What are you sensing? Maple leaned forward, breathing deeper now. More focused. Claire followed her dog's line of attention. And then she saw it. Something tiny, barely visible, caught on a low branch at the edge of the bushes. She walked closer. A scrap of fabric. Soft. Light. Swaying gently with the movement of the morning air. Claire's breath paused. It was a scarf. Child-sized. Pale yellow. Frayed a little at the ends. Maple sat down beside her, tail still. Eyes soft but sharp with meaning. Claire reached out carefully, lifting the small scarf from the branch. It was impossibly small in her hands. Too small to belong to anyone in the neighborhood that she knew of. And it didn't look old. Just misplaced. She turned it over slowly. Where did this come from? Maple nudged it lightly with her nose. Then looked up at Claire. That same urging expression from the night before. Claire felt a slow tightening behind her ribs. A sense that something tender and unfinished was unfolding. Something Maple had sensed long before she even stepped outside. She crouched lower, brushing her fingers through Maple's fur. You picked up on this yesterday, didn't you? Maple leaned her head onto Claire's knee. A soft affirmation. Warm. Loyal. Filled with quiet emotion. Claire glanced back at the porch. Then at the yard. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. The discovery wasn't frightening. Just curious. Meaningful in a way she couldn't quite define. She stood and wrapped the scarf around her hand. Okay, she whispered. I'm listening now. Maple exhaled slowly, relieved, as if Claire had finally stepped into the understanding she'd been waiting for. Claire looked around again. The bushes, the grass, the silent stretch of morning air. Nothing moved. Nothing answered her questions. But Maple stayed pressed against her leg, steady, comforting, guiding her in quiet ways. Claire stroked Maple's head gently. You did good, girl. Maple's tail gave one slow sweep. Soft, almost humble. Claire stepped backward, back toward the porch, the small scarf held carefully in her fingers. Maple followed her. Not tense, not frantic, just committed, as though the discovery was only the beginning. As they reached the top step, Claire paused. She looked once more toward the bushes, the sunlight glinting on leaves, the place Maple had been staring at for hours. A realization settled over her, warm and serious. Maple wasn't anxious. She wasn't scared. She was protecting something. Or someone. Something that mattered deeply to her instincts. Claire touched the scarf gently. Soft fabric. A tiny life's belonging. She swallowed. We're not done, are we? Maple rested her head against Claire's thigh. Quiet. Steady. Her answer was clear. Something or someone was still out there. And Maple wasn't going to rest until Claire understood the full truth. Claire stood in the morning light, holding the scarf, and felt the first stirrings of a deeper journey unfolding. A journey Maple had already started, and Claire finally stepped into it. Afternoon sunlight drifted gently across the yard. Warm, golden, the kind of mellow light that made everything slow down. Claire knelt beside her herb bed, loosening the soil with her fingers. The earth was soft and cool. A calming rhythm, press, lift, breathe. Maple lay nearby on the porch. Not sleeping. Not resting. Watching. Her ears flicked every few seconds. Her nose lifted toward the same patch of bushes. Her body held that quiet tension again. Steady, focused, listening to something Claire still couldn't hear. Claire looked over her shoulder. You're doing that thing again, she murmured. Maple didn't look away. Not even for a moment. Claire wiped her palms on her jeans and stood, brushing off bits of soil. You want to check it out? Maple finally looked at her, rising to her feet with a slow, purposeful stretch. Not excited. Not playful. Just ready. Claire walked across the yard, feeling the grass cool beneath her shoes. Maple stayed at her side, posture grounded, tail low but calm. When they reached the bushes, Maple's nose pressed close to the ground. Her breathing changed, faster at first, then slow, measured, thoughtful. Claire crouched beside her. What do you smell? Maple paused, then moved forward a few inches, then paused again. Tracking. Thinking. Claire followed her gaze and noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small indentation in the soil. Barely noticeable. No larger than the size of a child's fist. She leaned closer. It wasn't a paw print. Not exactly. But something tiny had stepped there. Recently. The soil was still slightly pressed. Edges soft. Not dried out by the sun yet. Claire's breath caught gently in her chest. Maple, was someone out here? Maple sniffed the area, then circled once. Then again, slower this time. Her tail hovered in that thoughtful middle space, neither tense nor relaxed. Alert. Certain. Claire moved a leaf aside. Another small indentation. Shallow. Light. Almost delicate. She felt a soft hum of realization beneath her ribs. Something small had wandered here. Something light enough to barely disturb the soil, but enough for Maple to sense it. Claire exhaled. You knew. Maple pressed her body softly against Claire's side. A gentle affirmation. Quiet, yes. The wind rolled through the yard, a cool, steady breeze. It carried faint smells Claire couldn't identify, but Maple lifted her nose again, catching every nuance. Claire watched her. The way her ears tipped forward. The tiny quiver in her whiskers. The slow, thoughtful shift of her weight. Not fear. Not anxiety. Purpose. Claire rose and scanned the bushes more carefully. The light slipped through the leaves, scattering tiny patterns across the ground. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. Yet Claire felt it, that same soft mystery hanging in the air. She crouched again, lifting a small broken twig near the indentation. It wasn't snapped sharply, just gently bent, as if something light had brushed over it. She turned to Maple. "You're trying to tell me they came through here, aren't you?" Maple stepped closer to the bushes, placing her paw beside the tiny print. Then she looked back at Claire. A simple, steady look. "Honest?" "Sure." Claire's chest warmed, a slow, emotional tide rising through her. She didn't know exactly what she was searching for, but she trusted Maple more than anything. The two of them stayed there for a long, quiet moment, just breathing, listening, letting the stillness speak. Finally, Claire whispered, "Let's keep looking." Maple's head tipped slightly, a soft nod in her own language, and she guided Claire along the edges of the yard. They found more signs. Nothing dramatic, just small disturbances. A leaf flipped over where it shouldn't be. A faint trail through the grass, like something tiny had pushed through. A piece of bark resting at an odd angle. Claire knelt again, touching the subtle trail. A gentle ache bloomed in her chest. Empathy, curiosity, something tender and protective. "You've been watching over this all along." Maple nudged her hand. A soft, encouraging push. Claire smiled faintly. "You're something else, you know that?" Maple's tail swept once. Slow. Warm. They continued walking the perimeter until Claire's gaze caught on something near the base of the oak tree. A small gap between the roots. Shadowed. Dark. Just large enough for something tiny to curl up inside. Claire stepped closer. Leaves were pushed aside there too. Disturbed just enough to be noticed if someone was looking with care, or if someone had Maple's instincts. Her breath softened. Is this where they were hiding? Maple stood beside her, body angled protectively toward the small hollow. Claire didn't reach inside. She didn't want to startle whatever might still be nearby. Instead, she sat down on the cool grass. Let the moment settle. Let the quiet speak. Maple sat beside her, leaning gently against her shoulder. Together, they looked at the small hollow, at the signs left behind, at the soft traces of tiny life passing through the yard. Claire whispered, half to Maple, half to herself, "There's more to this, isn't there?" Maple's answer came in the form of a gentle sigh, her head resting softly on Claire's thigh. And in that warm, still moment, Claire understood something important. Maple wasn't worried. She was guiding, helping, protecting something fragile, something that needed her. And Claire realized she was ready to follow Maple wherever this quiet trail led. Whatever was out there, they would find it together. The rain had finally stopped, but the night carried a strange heaviness, like the silence before a storm. Ian lay asleep beside Zora, who curled against his legs, her tail lightly tapping in her dreams. But around 2:13 a.m., Zora's eyes snapped open. A sound. Soft. Wrong. Out of place. Her ears lifted sharply. Another sound, this time clearer. A slow creak. A shift of weight. Something brushing against metal. Someone was at the gate. Zora rose instantly, muscles stiff, body alert. She walked to the door and stared at it, her breathing shallow but ready. She waited, listened, studied each frequency of the noise like she always did whenever she sensed danger. Another creak. Zora growled, deep low, warning the darkness that she was awake. Ian shifted in his sleep. "Zora, what happened?" he mumbled, half asleep. Zora looked at him, then at the window, her signal. Ian sat up. Now he heard it too. A faint metallic click from outside. Then footsteps. But these weren't normal footsteps. They were slow, careful, sneaking, someone trying not to be heard. Ian's heartbeat climbed. Zora moved to the window, nose pressed against the glass, her body stiff like a drawn bow. Ian peeked outside. A figure. Standing near the gate. Not moving completely, just turning his head, scanning the house. Ian's breath stuck. Zora growled louder, chest vibrating like a warning drum. The figure took one step forward. Then another. Ian pulled back, whispering, "Someone's there." Zora rushed to the main door and placed her paw on it. Not scratching, not barking, just letting Ian know. Let me handle this. Ian's hands trembled as he dialed his uncle. Chachu. Someone's outside our house. What? Lock all doors. I'm coming. But before he could say more, Zora barked for the first time. Not a playful bark. Not a territorial bark. A furious, threatening, I will protect my family bark. The figure outside flinched. Zora barked again, louder, sharper, powerful enough to wake half the street. Lights turned on in neighboring houses. Voices started murmuring. Doors creaked open. The figure panicked and began stepping back. But when he saw people waking up around him, he ran. Ian watched from the window as the shadowy figure disappeared into the darkness of the alley. Zora didn't stop barking until she was sure he was gone. Then she came back to Ian, head lowered, ears still stiff, waiting for reassurance. Ian dropped to his knees and hugged her tightly. Zora, thank you. You saved us. Zora licked his cheek and rested her head on his shoulder as if to say, I will always protect you. No matter what. Ian didn't know this night was just the beginning. Whoever tried to enter wasn't a random thief. He was looking for something. Or someone. And this wouldn't be the last time. The next morning felt heavier than usual. The sun was out, but Ian's mind was still stuck in the shadows of last night. Zora stayed close to him, closer than ever. Every small sound from outside made her ears twitch, her head turn, her body ready. Ian's Chachu arrived early, checking the gate bolts, the walls, the locks. This wasn't just a thief, he said, brows tight. A normal thief wouldn't stand and observe the house for so long. Ian felt a chill roll down his spine. Then who was he? Chachu didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. Zora walked around the gate, sniffing the ground deeply. Her nose stopped at one spot. She sniffed again, harder this time, and growled. Did he stand here? Ian asked. Zora's growl confirmed it. Chachu examined the spot too. He stayed here for a while, watching. Ian swallowed. Chachu placed a hand on his shoulder. If anything happens again, call me instantly. Ian nodded, but Zora kept staring at the gate as if expecting the intruder to return. Later that afternoon, Ian took Zora for a walk to clear both their minds. The street was lively again. Kids playing cricket, neighbors gossiping, shopkeepers shouting prices. Everything looked normal. But Zora wasn't relaxed. She sniffed the air constantly, eyes scanning every corner, tail straight with tension. When they turned the corner near the small grocery shop, Ian felt his steps freeze. A man lean with unshaved stubble, wearing a dusty blue jacket, stood across the street. He wasn't doing anything, just watching. Not the street, not the shop, but Ian. More specifically, Zora. Zora noticed him too. Her body stiffened instantly. Her fur raised. Her lips parted slightly, showing the beginning of a warning snarl. Ian whispered, Zora, is this him? Zora didn't blink. The man smiled faintly like he knew something they didn't. Then he slowly lifted his hand, not to wave, but to gently tap 2 fingers on his jacket pocket, almost like a signal. Zora suddenly barked, loud, sharp, protective. The man flinched slightly but didn't run. He just backed away, eyes locked on them, then disappeared behind a building corner. Ian's breath hitched. Why did he look at us like that? Zora stepped forward as if wanting to follow, but Ian held her leash tightly. No, not now. But inside, fear twisted into confusion. Who was this man? Why was he at their house last night? And why was he fixated on Zora? Ian knelt and held Zora's face gently. Girl, what's happening? What does he want from us? Zora pressed her forehead into his chest and whimpered softly. An answer. A warning. And a fear she couldn't describe. Ian didn't know it yet. But the man in the blue jacket wasn't just watching. He was waiting. And he was coming back. The wind was strangely still that evening. Not a single leaf moved in the courtyard. Even the stray dogs in the street were quieter than usual, as if the whole neighborhood had paused to listen for something unseen. Ian sat on the edge of his bed, books open but unread. His eyes drifted again and again to Zora, who lay beside the window, alert, her head lifted every few minutes, ears turning at the faintest of sounds. She wasn't resting. She was waiting. Ian finally put the book down. Zora, you feel it too, don't you? Zora didn't move, but her tail tapped the floor once, soft, unsure. Ian walked to the window and looked outside. The street was empty except for a distant light flickering near the corner shop. Everything looked normal, yet his stomach felt tight. He closed the curtains and sat beside Zora on the floor. She shifted closer, placing her head in his lap. Her breathing was steady, warm, comforting, but her muscles were tense beneath her fur. A girl like you shouldn't be worried, he whispered. Zora blinked slowly. Then she nudged his hand, gently, almost like she was telling him, I'm here. I'm watching. You're safe. Ian sighed and rested his head against the wall. Outside, the wind still didn't move. Later that night, the house settled into silence. Chachu had gone home. Ian's mother was asleep. Even the lights seemed dimmer than usual. Zora walked the house as she always did. Quiet paws against the floor, nose brushing corners, tail held level. She stopped at the front door. Ian watched her from the hallway. Zora, what is it? A soft rumble rose from her chest. Not aggression. Not fear. Something in between. A warning. Ian stepped closer. Zora's eyes stayed fixed on the door. He placed his hand on her back. Her fur was standing slightly, barely, but enough for him to feel it. The silence outside deepened. Zora pressed her ear to the bottom gap of the door. Ian leaned down too. Nothing. No steps. No breathing. No whisper. Just the heavy, unmoving stillness of a night that wasn't supposed to be this quiet. Ian swallowed. Is he out there? Zora didn't answer, but her nose twitched once, twice, as if catching something faint in the air. She stepped backward suddenly, not out of fear, but to position herself between the door and Ian. A protective stance. Ian's heart beat faster. He whispered, Zora, please stay close. She didn't look away from the door. Minutes passed. Slowly, Ian sat beside her on the rug. His fingers touched the floor in nervous patterns. Zora stayed motionless, except for the small rise and fall of her breath. Then, a metallic sound echoed softly from outside. Ian froze. It wasn't loud. It wasn't forceful. Just a small, careful tap. Zora's ears shot up. Her head lifted sharply. She inhaled hard through her nose. Ian's throat tightened. Tap, tap. Two soft clicks, like someone brushing metal against the gate latch. Ian whispered, He's back. Zora growled, low and controlled. Not loud enough to provoke. Not soft enough to ignore. A measured warning. Ian backed away slowly, but Zora stepped forward. Steady, fearless, instinctive. She didn't bark. She didn't rush. She simply stood her ground, body straight, tail down but firm, nose pointed at the door. Tap. Then silence. Zora stepped closer to the door. Ian held his breath. Seconds passed. Then, a shadow moved across the bottom of the window. A faint blur, almost invisible. Zora tensed. Ian's hands trembled. Zora, don't do anything. Just stay with me. The shadow paused. Zora's eyes narrowed. Her breathing slowed. And then the shadow moved away, quiet footsteps fading in the distance. Zora waited, listening. Her ears twitched one last time, then slowly lowered. She stepped back, exhaled, and nudged Ian's leg. It's okay. He's gone. For now. Ian sank to his knees and hugged her tightly. I don't know who he is, or why he's watching us, but I'm glad you're here. Zora leaned her head into his shoulder, soft, warm, steady. The wind finally started moving again, rustling the leaves outside. But the night didn't feel peaceful. Not anymore. Because Ian now knew something for certain. The man wasn't just returning. He was searching. And Zora was the reason he hadn't found what he wanted yet. Morning arrived slowly. Soft light drifted through the curtains. The sky was a pale orange, calm and gentle, the kind of dawn that usually brought peace. But Ian didn't feel peaceful. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that faint shadow by the window, and heard that quiet metallic tapping by the gate. Zora stayed beside him the whole night. Not resting. Not fully asleep. Just watching him. Guarding him. And now, as sunlight approached the room, she finally moved. She stretched. Shook her coat. Then walked to the front door. The same spot she had guarded for hours. Ian followed her, rubbing the tiredness from his eyes. Zora. What if he comes back in the morning? Zora didn't look at him. She pressed her nose to the bottom of the door again, searching for a scent in the cool morning air. Her tail lifted slightly. Ian held his breath. She sniffed once, twice, then stepped back. Something had changed. Her posture softened, but only a little, as if she sensed the danger had faded, but not fully disappeared. Ian cracked the door open slowly. Zora stood beside him, ready to block if she had to. The courtyard lay quiet, bathed in a soft glow. No sign of movement. No footprints. No disturbed leaves. But there was something. A folded paper. Left right next to the gate. Ian's chest tightened. He picked it up carefully. Zora pressed against his leg, tense again. The paper was damp from the morning dew. He opened it, holding the edges with shaking hands. A short message was written in hurried handwriting. I know what's inside the house. I will come for it. Ian's breath caught. What does he mean? He whispered. Zora stepped closer, sniffing the paper sharply. A low rumble building in her chest. Ian? What's going on? His mother's voice came from behind him. He hid the note instinctively. He didn't want to scare her. Not yet. Zora looked between them, alert, unsettled. Ian forced a small exhale. Nothing, Amy. Just checking outside. But Zora didn't move from the door. Amy frowned lightly. Zora's been acting strange these days. Is something scaring her? Ian swallowed. No, she's just being protective. Amy smiled softly. She's always been protective. Ever since the day Dad found her. Ian nodded, but the words felt heavy. Amy went to the kitchen. Zora sat in front of the door again. Quiet. Watchful. Waiting. Ian knelt beside her and whispered. What does he want, girl? And why now? Zora didn't blink. Her eyes stayed fixed on the empty yard, the quiet gate, the morning shadows. Later that day, Ian walked to school, Zora by his side. She never left him anymore. Not even for a second. Every sound made her ears twitch. Every passing bike made her reposition herself between Ian and the road. Every unfamiliar face made her tail lower just an inch. She wasn't afraid. She was analyzing, protecting, thinking. Ian could feel it with every step. When they reached his school gate, Zora refused to go back home. Ian knelt in front of her. Zora, it's okay. I'll only be inside for a few hours. But Zora didn't budge. Her body stiffened. Her nose lifted into the air, catching something Ian couldn't sense. Then her gaze turned sharp and sudden, toward the far corner of the street. Ian followed her eyes. A man stood near a tea stall, face covered with a scarf, hands in pockets, watching, not moving, not talking, just watching. Ian's heart dropped. Zora. That's him, isn't it? Zora took one step forward, her posture tall and protective. The man looked away casually, but too quickly, too forced. Then he walked behind the shop and disappeared into the alley. Zora wanted to follow. Ian held her collar gently. No, don't. Not alone. Zora whined softly but stayed. Ian whispered. We'll tell someone. We have to. But he didn't move. He stood there for minutes, breathing deeply, trying to calm the fear sitting heavy in his chest. Zora leaned against him, anchoring him. Her presence steady, warm, reassuring. She's right, Ian murmured. I can't stay silent anymore. After school, Ian returned home early. He locked the door, closed the windows, pulled the curtains. Zora checked every corner of the house, every door, every window. She returned to him with a soft grunt. Clear. Safe. For now. Ian sat on the couch, hands pressed together. He finally took out the paper again. The words felt colder this time. I know what's inside the house. I will come for it. Zora rested her head on his knee. Her eyes lifted to his, gentle, warm, and fierce all at once. Ian whispered. He's not coming for an object, is he? He's coming for someone. Zora blinked, slow, deliberate. Ian's throat tightened. It's me. Isn't it? Zora leaned closer. Not denying. Not confirming. Just staying beside him. Ian lifted the note again. His hands shook. I need answers, Zora. I need to know why he's after me. What he wants, what I don't understand. Zora nudged his wrist. Then she walked to the old wooden chest near the bookshelf, the one his father used to keep locked. Zora sat beside it, staring, still, waiting. Ian froze. Zora, why are you looking at Dad's old chest? Zora didn't look away. Not even once. Ian's heartbeat changed pace. Fast. Uneven. He approached the chest slowly. Dust lay across the lid. The lock hung slightly loose, almost broken from time. Zora pressed her paw gently against the side. Ian knelt. His hand rested on the lid. He swallowed. Zora, what do you know? She breathed out softly, as if telling him, open it. The truth is inside. Ian closed his eyes for a moment. Then he lifted the lid. The hinges creaked, slow and eerie as the chest opened. Inside, a single photograph lay on top. Ian picked it up. His hands trembled. Zora leaned into his side. Ian stared at the image. And in that instant, everything he thought he knew, everything that didn't make sense, everything the man wanted, suddenly shifted. Because the man in the picture, standing beside his father, was the same man Zora growled at last night. Ian felt the breath escape his lungs. And Zora nuzzled his shoulder. A soft, grounding touch. The truth wasn't just close. It was here. In his hands. And the man in the shadows wasn't a stranger at all. The room felt colder. Not from the weather, but from the weight of the truth sitting in Ian's hands. He stared at the photograph. His father stood on the left, smiling in that gentle, quiet way Ian remembered. Beside him, a much younger version of the man who had been lurking outside. Same eyes, same shoulders, same presence. Zora pressed her head into Ian's chest, grounding him. Ian whispered, Zora, who is he? Why was Dad with him? Zora breathed out slowly. It wasn't the breath of confusion. It was the breath of someone who already understood. Ian ran his fingers across the faded print. He could feel his heartbeat echoing through the frame. He lifted the photograph closer. On the back, a short message was written in his father's handwriting. To my brother, one day we'll make things right. Ian's breath caught. Brother? His voice cracked slightly. Zora lifted her head, watching his expression carefully. Ian whispered again, softer. That man, the one outside. He's my uncle. The room felt suddenly smaller. The air heavier. Zora stepped closer and rested her chin on his knee. Her eyes warm, steady, patient. She had known. For days. Maybe longer. Ian held the photo to his chest and closed his eyes. Everything made sense now. The man wasn't hunting him. He wasn't looking for an object. He wasn't a stranger. He was family. But then, why hide? Why leave a threatening message? Why watch from the shadows? Ian ran a hand over his face. Zora, what do I do now? Zora stood, walked to the door and sat, facing it calmly as if waiting for something inevitable. Ian understood. Talk to him, right? Zora blinked once. A slow, steady yes. That evening, Ian sat on the porch. Zora sat beside him, her body aligned with his. A silent promise that she would not leave his side. The sun dipped lower. Shadows stretched across the lane. A motorbike passed. Two children played with a ball across the street. Ordinary sounds. But under them, Ian sensed something else. Zora lifted her head. Her ears sharpened. Her body leaned slightly forward. Ian whispered, Is he here? Zora didn't growl. She didn't bark. She simply stood and walked a few slow steps toward the gate. Ian followed. The air shifted. Footsteps approached, careful, steady, familiar. A figure stepped from behind the corner. The same man. Same scarf. Same eyes. But now there was no hiding in the way he walked. He stopped a few feet from the gate. Zora stood tall, protective yet calm. No fear, no aggression, just readiness. Ian's voice trembled. "Are you my father's brother?" Silence. The man's eyes lowered. His shoulders fell. Then he nodded. Ian felt something inside him soften and ache at the same time. "Why didn't you just talk to us?" he asked. The man removed his scarf slowly. His face was older, worn by years of mistakes and regret. His voice was soft. "I didn't know how to face you, Beta. I failed your father. I disappeared when he needed me most." Ian swallowed. The man continued, voice shaking slightly. "I came back months ago. I learned what happened to him. And I thought maybe I could protect you the way I was supposed to protect him." Ian's heart tightened. Zora stepped slightly in front of him, still watchful. The man smiled sadly. "She knows I'm not a danger. She just needed to understand why I came. That's why she never attacked. She only kept you away from me, until she sensed the truth." Ian looked down at Zora. Her tail swayed once, small, gentle, reassured. Ian whispered, "Zora, you were keeping us both safe." Zora pressed her head against his leg. The man took a careful step forward. "I left the note because I wanted to warn you. Someone else has been looking for me. Someone who thinks I still have something your father once carried. I didn't want them reaching you." Ian froze. Zora lifted her head sharply. The man raised both hands gently, calming the tension. "I swear, I never wanted to frighten you. I wanted to protect you. But fear makes people act foolishly, and I acted like a coward." Ian studied him. The lines on his face, the remorse in his eyes. He felt the truth settle like a quiet weight inside him. Zora walked toward the gate, slow, deliberate, and sniffed the air around the man. Then she stepped back. Her tail lifted slightly. Permission. Ian exhaled, emotions loosening in his chest. He opened the gate. The man's eyes softened with gratitude and sorrow. Ian stepped closer. "You could have just knocked," he whispered. The man smiled faintly. "I know. I'm sorry." Zora brushed her head against Ian's hand, then against the man's hand. A small gesture. A bridge being rebuilt. The man knelt, tears gathering quietly. "Your father was braver than I ever was, and he loved you more than anything. I want to honor him, even if I'm late." Ian's throat tightened. Zora leaned against them both. Steady, warm, grounding. The man whispered, "Your father saved her, you know, Zora. She was a tiny pup when he found her." Ian blinked. "What?" "He said she had the strongest spirit he'd ever seen. He believed she was meant for you." Ian looked at Zora, really looked. Her protective nature. Her intuition. Her deep, unwavering loyalty. It all fit. Zora wasn't just a pet. She was a legacy. Promise. A guardian meant to continue what his father started. Ian hugged her tightly. Zora rested her head on his shoulder, breathing softly. The man placed a gentle hand on both of them. "Your father trusted her with your life," he said quietly, "and she has never failed that trust." Ian closed his eyes. The wind softened. The street quieted. The moment held its breath. And in that stillness Ian finally understood. Zora had never been protecting the house. She had been protecting his father's last wish. The bond strengthened. The danger eased. Healing began. And the boy, his dog, and the uncle stepped inside together, where the porch light glowed like a blessing. Warm, peaceful, whole.